Topping Our Life's Math and History, and we are going to take a look at the MADSPM method. So what we're going to do is understand why this method is used in the SAT. So when you think about the SAT, the goals in the math section is to compute and do the math problems correctly as fast as possible. And what we're going to do is this method is going to help you understand and solve exponents super fast. We're not going to solve any problems, but we are going to understand what the letters represent. Because just like PEMDAS and just like GEMS, order of operations, each of the letters represents some kind of property in the exponents unit. So I'm pretty sure we understand what an exponent is. So an exponent happens when you have a giant number, the coefficient, and a small number to the right. That is saying that you have to multiply this number by itself that many times. So since we have a 4 and a 3 as an exponent, we would say we have to multiply 4 by itself 3 times. Sometimes we would also see ones that are a little bit bigger, like 2 to the 5th power. That's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And all that represents is going to equal 32. So that is the basics of exponents. But what do the letters represent? So the first two letters of MADSPM, MA, represents multiplication. So when we talk about exponents with multiplication, picture this. Imagine you have 2 to the 3rd power, then we have to multiply that by 2 to the 7th power. If we have the same coefficients, but we can have the same or different exponents, when you multiply, that's what the letter M represents. The A represents addition. So when you're multiplying the exponents, you're actually having to add the exponents together. What we could do is expand it and solve it out, but that would take too long and that would waste your time on the SAT. Instead, our final answer would be 2 to the 10th power. So what it technically is saying is, instead of multiplying, which originally it was, you add the two exponents if it was the same coefficient, and then it'll get you to your answer. The next one is almost the same thing, but instead of multiplying, we have to divide. But instead of dividing, we have to actually subtract them. Sometimes in school, your teacher will give you what is 10 to the 8th power? Divide that by 10 to the 2nd power. Well, the problem is, what they want you to do is to use this method. But the first thing you probably have done before learning it is actually expanding all of it out and both numbers and then crossing out the zeros. The SAT College Board wants you to analyze and think fast. You can't only think, you must do. You have to be that fighter pilot in combat. So what we have to do is, instead of dividing, we have to subtract instead. So 8 subtract by 2, 10 to the 6th power will become our answer. That's for division. PM as 2 letters is very confusing, and it's the most confusing out of all of them. Because what it's saying is, when you are raising a power, the problem is you're actually doing multiplication, which could be confused with the other letter M. Here's an example. We are going to say 3 to the 2nd power, but then we have to multiply that by some kind of, let's say, 7th power. So when we're trying to raise a power to make it become more powerful, instead of adding or subtracting, what we have to do is we have to multiply them. This power is asking the 7 to make it even more powerful. So instead, what we're going to say is 3 to the 14th power. This is going to be super helpful when you want to amplify the math, but also understand very fast what to do. Don't confuse this with the MA. PM means you're raising the power. MA means you are multiplying the powers, but you're actually adding them. And DS represents you're subtracting them. But this strategy for the SAT does have a little bit of a flaw. The problem is, how are we going to add the exponents? And how are we going to subtract them? So MADSPM is sometimes going to work, but not always. So what we're going to do is explain this. Every time you add or subtract exponents, the best idea is to actually expand it and try it out. But there are some other properties that MADSPM does not follow. The properties are, every time you have an exponent and you have it by 1, if you have it by 0, it will equal 1. Let's say if I have 7 to the 0th power, it will equal 1. Mathematicians argue that sometimes it can be undefined, but you'll never receive that on the SAT, nor will it appear on the PSAT. Oh, also, here's another property. Anything to the first power or something is equal to itself. So let's say 4. That is going to be the same thing as 4 to the 1th power. If I was trying to add the exponents, or if I was trying to add the exponents, if I say x to the power of 1 plus 2 plus 3 as exponents, that'll be x to the power of 6. And this one is a little bit more complicated because it's learned in high school math. But sometimes mathematicians will get to something like 4 to the negative 8th power. But there is a little bit of a problem. Putting a negative exponent is not really the formal way to do mathematics. So what mathematicians have to do is turn it into something else. And doing it as negative exponents is actually a lazy way of doing mathematics. Let's use an exponent of 10 to the negative 2nd power and see what happens. What if I told you that when you have a negative exponent, you're not actually going to get a negative number? Instead, if I try to move that to the bottom, it will give me a tiny fraction of 1 to 100. When you have a negative exponent, it will never actually become a negative number. It will actually become a little fraction. So I hope these tools will help you on the SAT. And when you are taking the SAT or the PSAT, think fast, but don't rush. Use these tools to help you map out your flight plan and see how you can do well in that combat. Remember, you're basically a fighter pilot trying to make fast and critical decisions. I hope this video has helped you understand MADSPM method. Thank you for watching Top Opinionized Math Industry. Like and subscribe.